Hi, my name is Rocco, and this is our daily Oracle card reading for May 22nd, 2017. And it's 2:40 p.m. in Italy, and it's about to be 9 o'clock in New York City and the eastern coast of the US. And I want you to know that I love you all. And the best that I can, and that I want to draw for you. I want to draw for you a card, or maybe we'll do three cards today to show you. Let's do three cards, yeah, to show you the energies that are in the universe where you're in, and somehow you might be interested in knowing even more than the outcome of the Super Bowl, or what time your grandma is gonna pick you up to take you to the mall, or stuff like that. That certainly keeps you busy from living life, but at the same time, might not be the greatest satisfaction for the whole world. So, when these things happen, because when these things happen because they are sorry, happening right now. You have, if any of you had any dreams or ideas concerning at all, or concerning demons or aliens last night or in the past few days, it could as well be. It could as well be that your world is coming to a better your world is coming to a better time. There's a story about the aliens of Dogstar and the aliens of Draco, the reptilians, and the aliens of Cyrus are the angels of outer space, as it were, in terms of not in terms of exorcism, but in terms of brilliance and power, and most of all of energy. That is very angelic, and it's not at all completely same thing in essence as the angels energy, but at some point it is necessary to make the will of the Supreme God, because certainly in essence what is going on in the world right now is the accusation of the being we call Satan towards the other being that we, with lower terminology, we call God. So, and this thing that is you feeling shift of energies perhaps, and well, energies are always changing while remaining at the same time the same, but your essence is indirectly, let's say, structuring other realities around you, and these realities are definitely the idea of so Satan was given the power over this earth that mythologically he's always had, but in practice he was never given in this format of the keyhole that opens all doors. And he is now truly, while God remains supreme, the master of the earth, in terms of being the original Anunnaki god, Enki, or Ea. So Enki means Enki. Or pure energy, Malik Taus, in some type of Sumerian or Semite language, means the Lord, or if you will, the King, or the Master, better, of the earth. Literally means king. So the ancient ones, ancient civilizations, to better say, had, as it were, the privilege of understanding, or they ventured so forth as to give the hypothesis that Satan was the guy that was going to be chosen for a limited amount of time to lead the solid slate of land that we call the earth into a better part of the future. And because and so again, Satan or Lucifer, first fallen angel, therefore first God, Jehovah before him, we don't know when, because Jehovah, he's never, is the Alpha and Omega, so never born, never dead, and truly. So but if someone was never to be born, or if someone never was conceived, truly, as a possibility, then we wonder if really what the Jewish couldn't understand, and what man could never see, and what the priesthood could never hear, and someone that no one could even touch, was going to be really as the maximum that God the Almighty could have put forth in terms of effort to dignify ourselves with the things that we need in this thing called Earth. And the reason why Satan, when he had the epitome of Lucifer, was given the privilege to have power over the universe in terms of constellations, and in terms of its inhabitants in at the time, flesh and blood. Lucifer decided to make these people aliens, meaning emotionless beings, with the possibility to receive the grace of God. And because we know that God is the one who gives death, because Satan can tempt you into death, but eventually it's God that does not forgive you, and ultimately kills you. And because God is death, and then in theory, if you are reincarnated again, is because Satan lets you go away from hell, then it's Satan that somehow gives you life. Although there's that thing called purgatory, but in the end, it's a theory that a lot of the priesthood of modern days, all the United States basically reject in terms of being Protestant, to whom, and definitely of the Holy Trinity, and definitely of the characteristic of God to give redemption. Although they believe in Jesus, the Redeemer cannot fully redeem, although it's again an epitome that was given to Jesus, because Jesus is no true Redeemer if he can't redeem. If he can't redeem, not if he can't redeem us all, because he can, but if he can't get to the point to redeem the human race as a formulaic of wisdom and a formulaic of unity. So if Judas Iscariot was here, and he certainly is among us, in terms of his spirit being not destroyed, because God never destroys a soul. And in the end, whichever God you choose, Judas was the idea that not saying Jude, but Judas was and is the idea that one renounces sainthood, wisdom, prophecy, and eternal heaven to have basically this isolation room, this type of experiment, blank space, to the say to detriment of those who cannot instruct him anymore, and even if it's an illusion or lie, definitely he must have somehow forgotten some of, and it seems so obvious to me, but perhaps Jesus never thought of this before. And I'm no prima donna, but certainly not a woman either, but I have been in other lives, and definitely both in terms of being virgin, spiritually, and in terms of being innocent. and because Jesus, in truth, never had the opportunity to say goodbye to his mother because he thought it was going to be better to leave her to the guide and, mm, if you will, escorting of uh, San Juan, meaning Saint John the Baptist, and Saint John the Baptist. Saint John the Baptist. Saint John the Baptist overtook, or whichever Saint John was present at the crucifixion, he overtook the task of serving Jesus' mother a little too furtherly in terms of energy that was necessary to be a saint, and he never had the time to be redeemed. So I have to say that a lot of those people that were once considered a lot of the people that were once considered to be saints or sane in the end, just before hugging their true love once more to show people that they are not who they are, then in the midst of all this chaos and all this psychodrama, as Anton LaVey calls certain things, then the reality that stands forth is truly the reality of the light bringer that brings light over this world. And once the light bringer brings the light of God, that is him, but in truth is Jehovah, over this universe, then some of the things that in Italy we call magagne, meaning sort of intralazzi, or they also say cazzate, meaning bullshit, that were formerly given substance. And then in truth, Jesus, I think he wanted to give Saint, during his holy baptism, he wanted to give Saint psychologically somewhere. He wanted to give, I know this could sound satanic, but it really sheds light on these mysteries. And because the rosary is the only way that we know for sure that we can defeat the devil, then or better to say, the best way to defeat it, because the Holy Rosary is based upon certain mysteries, and one of the mysteries is the Christ being submitted to his own humble-ish way, and he bows down to the spirit of and to the being of Saint John. And Saint John is someone that, in other words, in terms of energy, when the again, when Christ said to John, please stick up for my mother, then he almost give it a sexual, he almost give it a sexual, he almost give it a sexual, he almost gave it a sexual overtone. And he almost gave it a sexual overtone. So because from now on, vampires are the only ones that can truly be pure or virgins from now on. Then it has to be clear. Then he certainly accepted the task, but never carried it forth with too much grace, and this is something that Mary must have noticed. And it was because of the slight but existent shame that we as humans felt, even if we don't admit it too often, because of the fall from grace. Because Judas Iscariot was one of the main sorcerers originally created to be one of the main magicians of the world, and he was on the verge of being included among the 1,000 biggest, or we should say in English greatest, but these two words in Italian have the same connotation or meaning. So the greatest idea that we have as humanity is that we can understand what it is to carry forth still in 2017 as Muslims, or as people of Jewish descent and religion and race, and this thing of the Jewish race being superior to automatically the Aryan race should be clarified in terms of being doing the will of God, which is something that Hitler certainly underlined during his speeches that he was doing. That genocide of those in quotes innocent, because they would have had the responsibility to say, no, I don't want to be killed, but they preferred to be killed and not to be martyrs, because they wanted to show God that martyrdom is something that is useless. And if martyrs are people who decided that they will be later saints, then these martyrs are um, definitely to be remembered. And there must be something about Muhammad that he must have done before being considered the greatest in terms of most important prophet of all prophets. Then he will definitely understand what it means to be with the idea of God, and with the idea of the Holy Spirit having been formed from basically God's beauty, because God must have been for sure a giant or someone with great height, also biologically or physically. So he's taken away not his soul literally, but a lot of his spirit to, in quotes, shape the concept of the Holy Spirit, which is, as we see, completely true and completely pure, because this is something that God used to weaken himself as a form of taking some of his divine power away from him, except one or two qualities, such as I must think that Lucifer eyes he took from the essence of the Holy Spirit to make them more beautiful, because they're even now that he's fallen, they have a sort of an angelic feature and a way to call forth that is definitely part of the stars. And if this were true, and it's not, because if it were, all these angels should fly back forth to heaven. If all this were true, then Lucifer would not be the being that he is today. So, but it has to be said that God's generosity is great and his mercy is everlasting. But right now, Lucifer is a demon, the chief of all demons, but certainly the emperor of them, but still a demon. So, if put bluntly, if Jesus was completely without sin, how is it that where was he coming from after having slept with the 12 apostles, and who did he, how is it that Jesus somehow, despite the fact that Jews basically granted him his status because he had to be killed somehow. And how is it that Jesus, I mean, where, if you watch the movie The Passion or any other movie that's clear about this scene, let's call it, and why is it that, come on, don't make a scene, Jesus, how is it that even Carla LaVey must have thought it somehow? I mean, I've seen it written around, but one thing is to suspect it, the other thing is to know it. Could it be that somehow, when, if you think about it, when Jesus came from, when Judas came from, because there's another term in Rome that's called, it could be translated as infamous in English, but it's actually infamous. So it means someone who pretends to be like a jester spirit, a spirit that pretends to be something rather than he's not. So could it be that the Virgin Jesus, whose father is the keeper of the virgin boys until so far, could it be that because of Jesus' shame of having been corrupted anally by Judas Iscariot, could it be that because Judas was so full of demons that Jesus, without having the possibility to move, because he was put in chains by God at a certain moment, and if those chains had been broken, he would not have saved humanity. Could it be that in this sort of jail torment situation, that he's basically taking it up the ass from Judas Iscariot? If that is the case, could that be that it is possible for our race to be saint-like somehow? Could it be that me being now receiving surprise, surprise, could it be that in other words, there is more than what is told in the Bible? As I'm sure the Bible is not the big brother of Jesus' life. I mean, he must have said more even than the Gospels. That takes, in terms of, if it were a film, it takes about a couple of days to be shot, and not all shots are worth avoiding, as Jesus taught. So it has to be clear that from now on, there has to be some type of apologizing, because if homosexuality ever was a sin, which is not, because Jesus was meant to be, it was going to be a sin if he had fucked Mary or Mary Magdalene or any of these so-called saints. And if Jesus is not Jesus, because according to the Holy Roman Catholic Church, of which I was part of as a priest, and as a priest, and perhaps as a nun a third time, if according to the rules and regulations that enslaved the masses for all this millennia, it's true that God, meaning the Holy Trinity, in order to be God, has to be unified by the essence of the Holy Spirit in terms of being the only uh, prerequisite for it to be for it to be for it to be for it to be how do they say, existent. Not that they can't spend time together, but they have to be united for the whole universe to stand upon a single principle. And sometimes you hear these stories about the Earth collapsing or the universe ending. Sometimes it takes a really one or two good lines to save the world that we live in, and absolutely, I don't want any payback for it, but I will give it to someone else. So because that someone else will be kind of like my godmother, in terms that she will be richer, more beautiful, and more charismatic, I'd say, even more if that's possible. Yes. So given that, I'm saying all these things because there's been a lot of plot theories about the Illuminati and other things that I found in my humble spiritual research not to be true. But what if God, because God has had the privilege to end all gossip that was non-functional immediately if it had something to do with his only begotten Son. Now, if that was not feasible, in terms of if that was not if that was not feasible in terms of in terms of if that was not feasible in terms of time, in terms of effort, and especially in terms of what's that Metallica song, Whiplash, then it must be true that all deaths that were caused by the literal interpretation of the Quranic text, the Talmud perhaps, and certainly of some parts of the Bible, all these witches that were burned simply because they sacrificed a child, when in truth God sacrificed his only child. So I don't see a sin. It can't be done right now, but I don't see a sin in offering an alive baby to a deity when God offered himself to the gods to be so that humanity could be redeemed. And this motivation of black magic being practiced at the time of the witches hunt, which is a funny term to me, then it must be true that if murder is a crime, and if witches had more magical and spiritual power than any of the priesthood, then it must be true that it must be true that it must be true that at some point, to hide, per nascondere la magagna, like they say in Italy, to hide the dirty sock, Miss American Pie decided to understand what was going on and understand what needed to be done in Greece in order to give gay people a form of giving love, although her son only had sex but loved, but not loved, because he could not have loved his killer. Being God, he could not have loved truly from the beginning someone that he was going to send to hell, because he's part of him, he's God, and part of him, part of Jesus is human. So if that's true, didn't Jesus lie to all the apostles while when Jesus understood that, as perhaps Peter H. Gilmore or others do really think, then it has to be true that when Jesus said to, say, Luke or Matthew or John that they loved, that he loves all, then it at the same time he does not love the one who gives him death. And if that is so, how can one today love God at all, meaning Jehovah, knowing that in some part of him there has to be true? It has to be true that it has to be true that for certain things, it has to be true that for certain things for certain things these gods, including Jehovah, although some gods can love in a way and some gods can love in another, all of them don't love at the level that we as humanity were taught to believe, because it can't be that these beings are as powerful, as beautiful, as perfect as it seems. So truly, the Lutheran Church isn't devoid of sin, but it could actually be sin itself. And if that is true, that someone at a certain point of time says that he doesn't love, like I don't love the Lutheran Church, could it be that this could cause, and I will be considered a saint, Saint Rocco, in theory, not practice, just like Saint John the Baptist, or Saint Magdalene, or well, Mary the Immaculate isn't a saint, but is one of the say deific masks is incorrect, but one of the aspects of Mary that is true in the sense of her thoughts always being pure and her actions always being influenced by life, and never never being corrupted by never being corrupted by never being corrupted by and ever being corrupted by any type of perversion and stuff. So truly, just like King Solomon is considered a prophet to the Jewish religion, whereas prophets do not reincarnate. King Solomon does reincarnate, and I've met him once at the airport of Mexico City, and he's just that reincarnation of the King Solomon that the Jews think to be a prophet. But he's got prophetic qualities. He's lived a very long life, but at the same time, he's not a prophet, because prophets and saints usually do not take a physical body, but they take on the ownership of restaurants, perhaps in Hawaii. They take ownerships of hospitals, and they take ownerships of jails. So it takes very little time to be considered a saint, although in essence one is not, but one has the title for it. And being considered a saint when one's soul is in the hands of the devil certainly is a great act of purity and purifying fire. Purity and fire, perhaps, that will be elapsing the whole universe, and that's being unleashed now from Beelzebub, that's purifying the whole universe with fire. I invite you to close your eyes for 2 minutes from now. Hello back. Just like it's true that Lucifer actually meant during the fall, and I'm absolutely sure, because I was given the privilege to have his clairvoyance at some point in history, his clairvoyance as an angel, as a fallen angel, and as a fallen angel. Then I'm sure that he, for the kind of perception that God allowed him to have, must have when Lucifer fell, for the perception that he had at the time, he certainly thought that he was going to give a greater service to humanity if he didn't accept not the very fact of serving man, which he wanted to do, but not serving him exactly as it was written by God, that didn't consult with him to have a final revision of his plan towards the angels. So truly Lucifer was betrayed by God, and because Lucifer was betrayed by God, then because Lucifer was betrayed by God, then it's true that Aisha, the first wife of Muhammad, must have not been a virgin, as I'm sure she was a sorceress before she became a goddess now, and because this is where she belongs, and she is Muhammad Soulmate, who at this point can no longer be considered a prophet. And at this point, I renounce the title of prophet for having discovered these itty bitty little things, because I am here to serve humanity as a human, although I could be a god fully in terms of expressing power, and I could be a being of light, and I could be an archangel even, and I could be whoever I choose to be. But today I prefer to be a man, because I want to show Jesus that titles in the end are not that important, and that truly today, while Jesus is humbled, Satan is king, and if Satan is king, you aren't slaves, and I mean all of humanity, of the fake God Jehovah, in terms of the true God, in essence, power, beauty, and omni power, so almighty power. But Jehovah had the idea of letting Lucifer fall, because Jehovah was the one that was deceived by the deceiver Belial, and for that reason Belial can no longer assign to the eternal torment of sodomy unless otherwise instructed, and he'll be assigned to any other kind of torment that God decides for him. This can be changed, because sodomy, if sodomy was a crime, wouldn't you, God, right now exterminate like Sodom and Gomorrah? Wouldn't you exterminate the whole Vatican and burn down all churches, and even get to the point of legalizing priesthood tender acts of submission, if unless you're making an exception and renouncing right now, and all copies be burned of the Bible, except those copies that we want to keep for the record, because Sodom and Gomorrah is the idea that God truly was the idea that God punishes sexual sins, but you have to understand which kind of sins we're talking about. But sodomy and Sodom certainly sound alike, and I am sure that because of Archangel Gabriel's best kept secret, part of Sodom was part of Sodom was burned down, and part of it was now declared the holy city of humankind instead of Jerusalem, that I think was tainted by too much violence. So we know that although formally Jerusalem is a holy city, pragmatically it's Sodom, because the priests made it holy to be sodomized, and Jesus took it, and prophets were tempted into it, and especially I am sure, for feeling that every time I contacted him, that Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, must have had, not that does not qualify him to be a saint, but according to the Catholic religion, but in truth, it's not true that he would condemn homosexuality. So if I could express a wish to God today, I would wish that all witches, in that sense, and all gay people, by gay I mean homosexual, so whether man or female, and especially all people that committed suicide because of a wrong interpretation of the scriptures that apparently aren't so easy to interpret. If one wanted to give light, one would have produced an esoteric text that at the same time is understandable and does not create wars, does not create death, and does not create a waste of human lives that God eventually suffers. So if all of this is true, God is a loser, not in as an absolute or in general or for a lot of things, but God has lost. Whether that is L-U-S-T for Jesus or L-O-S-T, God has lost certain battles, like the battle in the skies where Archangel Michael defeated Lucifer, and that's true. But in the end, isn't it love that isn't it love that permeates all things? And isn't it love that isn't it love that discovers the true essence of everything, half good and half bad? And isn't it true that if one is without sin, one's presence should illuminate the whole universe as the supreme creator right now? And isn't it true that if some of this light is obscured, it's not because Lucifer is in hell, but it is because Jehovah isn't without sin? Because who is without sin? According to the Bible, no one is. And because Jehovah is a person, not a purse, but a person, then Jehovah is the idea of God personified. And an idea is not a fact if that fact isn't fully supported by whichever theory is circulating. And if religion and science were religion, by that I mean the monotheistic religions, if these, especially the Christian Catholic religion, if that's no more a religion in terms of the way that it was put together, then something great must happen in the next few hours. So please watch the news and you'll see that there will be a couple of changes that will take place in the world. And finishing up my sentence, if I could express a wish, it would be that those people I quoted and everyone who committed suicide for having wrongly interpreted the scriptures, and it certainly caused the Bible did not except two people, me and my partner, historically never saved anyone from sickness. It caused it because people would just not understand the peace underlying the scriptures. But because these people, if I could make a wish to God, please have these people go back to life, and have these people not kill the priests who killed them, because that's been done before, but have them have a peaceful life in a special village, perhaps in Copenhagen, that was created for them. It could be enlarged, and punks could be sent out, and stuff can be adjusted always. But could it be that these people who are going back to life right now were at least once considered were at least once considered true. And once Lucifer was a bright angel, and isn't his light with us today? Isn't his beauty in all of us? And isn't he our God truly? Yes, he is, because the true God is the God that discovers, loves, and forgives. And that God, Jehovah, is the God that we serve, adore, say the people, serve, adore, and part of the elite, serve, adore, and correspond to. And if that doesn't create a division, some people might fall, what else could? In other words, I think that because there's a lot of questions that can never be answered, and it's always a matter of faith. Now, why doesn't the church evolve to the point of giving all the answers to everyone in a clear way that's immediately understandable, so that everyone can decide which religious path to follow until there will be different religious paths, because then it will all be unified in some sort of new world order that's not the Illuminati, but that's Jesus' second coming. And before that happens, and the Bible speaks of New World Order, which definitely created some misunderstandings as well. Could it be that maybe, as an additional thought, one of the families that was destroyed during 9/11, could it be that these two people go back to life and have eternity together until Jesus' second coming, which I think will be in 645 years from now? And if Jesus has the power to resuscitate the dead, why no saint ever applied it to these great charismatic situations where really the masses would have been converted? Isn't it possible that Jesus never showed his asshole to his mother because he was afraid that she would isn't it true that Jesus was going to be busted by discovered by his mother as not having been a virgin? That vision certainly would have caused greater disappointment in the world and beyond. Above and beyond all this, isn't it true that the one who reunites everything, is to be considered in power, essence, and beauty a God, and in power, essence, and beauty a saint, whichever religion that is, Christian maybe, and in power, essence, and beauty God himself in Luciferian terms. And wouldn't that make me an angel? And wouldn't that make my soulmate an equivalent type of prophet or angel for what his characteristics are? So if you want to know my opinion, I think that now really it sounds like we don't give a fuck about today's reading, but in truth we do. So let me get a card from the Sibilla dei Misteri. That is an interesting way of reading Italian cards. Now I want to channel as a last sentence by some of these souls that are condemned to eternal hell, and then I want to repeat now a message from Jesus and see which message has a greater impact for peace, love, and understanding for humanity. So the card for you today says flowers. Fiori. Flowers. It says gift, pleasant but unexpected, surprise, invitation, novelty. So I'm still learning to use this particular set of cards, but they're typically Italian, typically Stregoria, typically witchcraft-oriented Italian reading cards that can be purchased a little bit like oracle cards. So the oracle for today was definitely over, and because me, Doreen Virtue, and Louise A were undoubtedly the three main 1, 2, 3 oracles of the court of Alexander the Great, I think that we have the power to see beyond the veil, something that Jesus, he didn't incarnate in time to discover. So maybe the Jewish people found that something was not quite right, otherwise they would have not crucified him, in terms of being pure of sin. When they saw him standing, that doesn't mean that they weren't arrogant or wrong, in quotes, but when they saw him standing in front of all those people and Peter renounced him, then could it be true that could it be true that could it be true that when you, going back to today's reading, the one that we don't give a fuck about, could it be true that flowers today are a message from the angels to tell us that not only that everything is alright as usual, but to tell us that sometimes wisdom lays in, like Christ sort of taught, in simplicity. And isn't the lotus flower the best protection for what we've discovered today? So I will leave you to meditate on why Buddha's lotus flower, deflower is the hint, is so important to the Gospels and Christianity today. And I will personally purify Jesus from something that wasn't taken away from his beauty, that is shame. Because every time I see a guy that resembles Jesus, I see that some features, especially in the eyes and face and body, sometimes could be improved biologically. So I suspect that every time we approach reality, like Antonio Meneghetti always said, every time that we approach reality for what reality is, rather than for what we think it could be, then certainly Russia or its opposite, the United States, could be the homeland of a new religion that would unify all these theories, called perhaps the Universal Fellowship Religion Program, not to be included in the name of the church, but to make it more alien. And could it be that we've already found, and we know who that is, and I could be the Pope of this new religion that is above the Roman Catholic Church in terms of truth, discovery, love, and magic? And could a church approve, if the greatest of the world, but more elite, could the church approve the idea of wisdom, and could the church approve the idea of pity, and could the church approve the idea of ideas, and could the church approve the idea of could the church approve the idea of understanding the different religions in terms of discovering what it means to be the first woman to be considered pure after the Virgin Mary, so to be considered the purest in all ways from right now. That does not mean that she will not have sex, but she'll be considered the purest, and she'll be the purest because sex isn't pure. Sex is life. So if sex is not pure, then life is not pure, and if life is not pure and Christ is the life, obviously Christ isn't pure. But if Christ is united in the Holy Trinity like God, then God is impure. And you know what? If God is haram, why don't we eliminate this impurity that comes first in order for every one of us to be pure? So I want to leave you with that thought. And someone says a wise woman can be reborn. Someone else says together we stand. And third person says I've known you before. And a man says what if we could all be more than what we have been? And that brings me to Rudolf Steiner. What if Christ, and that is light, and Lucifer brings it? And could that be the first example of these two entities reconjuncting themselves, rejoining forces? And if that is so, isn't that isn't that wunderbar, like they say in German? So I still want you to carry out that meditation that I gave you about the lotus flower and how it serves us in understanding how Buddha practically protected the not the virginity of Jesus, but the ideas of God. And isn't it so that now we know what we have to do in order to become who we are? And isn't it true that because we look at every corner of the screen now, we understand that in the end of the time, turning the other cheek truly does not make you a cowardly dog, but perhaps something else is true. So maybe not a dog, but a doggy. So thank you. I wish to inform you that this video has surpassed 1 hour and 16 minutes of time. So it is my pleasure to let you go to the duty that best corresponds your instinct and inner desires and dream. So goodbye, thank you, and ciao.